It happened at the end of October, one of those gray, wet evenings where the clouds feel like they're pressing down on the whole world. My business trip to Raleigh had been cut short because of the storm barreling up the coast. Flights were getting delayed, some canceled, and I didn't feel like being stuck in a hotel for 2 more nights, so I grabbed the last-minute option and flew home early. There was something nice about the idea of surprising her. We'd had a rough couple of weeks, nothing dramatic, just the usual distance that creeps in when you're both working too much and not really checking in with each other. I thought maybe I could break that cycle. Bring home her favorite pastries from the airport cafe, cook her dinner, catch her up on the client I'd finally gotten to sign after 2 months of chasing. I didn't call or text. I remember thinking it would be a sweet kind of surprise, the kind couples do when they still care about the little things. I guess that's where I was already fooling myself. By the time I got to our house, it was after 8 p.m. The sky had gone dark early. The rain had turned into a mist and the trees lining our block were stripped of most of their leaves. I parked out front like always. I even sat in the car for a few seconds before getting out, just watching the glow from the living room window. That's the first thing that felt off. The porch light was off. Celine always left it on if she was home alone, said it made her feel safer, especially after that one time last winter when a raccoon scared the hell out of her by the trash cans. But tonight, nothing. Just the inside lights, warm and orange, spilling out through the blinds. Cozy, almost. Too cozy. I got out, grabbed my suitcase from the trunk, and started walking up the front path. That's when I heard it, laughter. Not TV, not music, real laughter. Hers, unmistakably, and another voice. A guy's voice. My first instinct wasn't even suspicion. I think I froze more out of confusion. I told myself maybe her brother was in town or maybe one of her old friends had dropped by to catch up. Celine was always the social one between the two of us. She had friends from everywhere, school, internships, book clubs, yoga studios. So, sure, it could have been innocent. It could have been nothing. But I kept walking. As I got closer to the door, I heard more. Low conversation, the clink of glasses. Something about the way they were talking soft, in asterisk mate, like they were in a bubble. The kind of bubble you don't form with just anyone. I glanced through the side window, between the slats of the blinds, and what I saw nearly made me drop my bag. Celine was on the couch, wearing that soft gray sweater she usually reserved for our movie nights. Her legs curled up beside her, barefoot. And next to her, this guy. Mid-30s, maybe? Clean-shaven, dark hair, wearing one of those fitted jackets you only buy if you want to be noticed. They were sitting close, too close. Their wine glasses rested on the coffee table, already half empty. Her hand, and this is the part that still plays on loop in my head, was resting on his knee. Lightly. Casually. Like it belonged there. I stood at the door for another second, then opened it. Neither of them jumped. Neither of them moved, really. That's what got me. She didn't look caught. She looked prepared. Oh, she said, standing up as I stepped inside. You're home early. I stared at her. Then at him. He looked uncomfortable but not guilty. Not scared. Like he was following her lead. I thought your flight was tomorrow, she said, walking over to me, voice calm, like nothing was wrong. This is Eric. We went to college together, you remember me mentioning him? I didn't. Or maybe she had, years ago, and it never stuck. His car broke down on the way to the airport, she continued. He's flying out tonight. I offered him some coffee while he waited on the tow truck. My eyes flicked to the wine glasses. 2 of them. Half drunk. No coffee in sight. He had a glass of wine, she added, noticing my look. Just one. It's cold out and he was already here, and we were talking, catching up. Nothing weird. I nodded. My mouth was dry. I glanced at Eric, who gave a tight smile and a half wave. He didn't stand up, didn't apologize for intruding. Just sat there like he had every right to be in my house. Celine looked at me like she was waiting for me to say something. Anything. Long trip? She asked, walking past me to grab my suitcase like nothing had happened. Yeah, I muttered. Client stuff. I couldn't look at her. I felt like I was floating, watching myself from outside my own body. Everything about the moment felt wrong, like I'd walked into the wrong version of my life. She led me toward the bedroom, left my suitcase by the dresser, and kissed me lightly on the cheek. I'll walk Eric out, she said. I just nodded. I didn't follow her. I didn't even go back to the living room. I sat down on the edge of the bed and stared at the floor. A minute passed, maybe 2, and then I heard the front door open and close. She came back into the room a few minutes later, acting like everything was normal. Like I hadn't walked in on her in a moment that most people would scramble to hide. You okay? She asked, sitting next to me. Yeah, I said automatically. Just tired. She smiled. Let me grab you something to eat. I didn't stop her. That night, I laid in bed, facing the wall while she curled up beside me, phone in hand. She scrolled quietly. I watched the digital clock on the nightstand blink through the hours. Midnight. 1. 2. She eventually fell asleep. I didn't. I kept thinking about the wine. The laughter. Her hand on his knee. The way she didn't panic when I walked in, just calmly stood up, explained things like she'd practiced the script. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe I was being dramatic. But something in me knew, really knew, that the moment I walked through that door, a part of our relationship shifted. Or maybe it just exposed what had already changed long before. It wasn't the hand on his knee. It wasn't the wine. It was the ease. The ease of it all. Like I'd walked into a story she was already telling without me. That night, I didn't sleep. Not even for a minute. I just lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, listening to the soft rhythm of Celine's breathing beside me. She slept like it was any other night. Peacefully. As if nothing strange had happened. As if I hadn't walked in and seen her hand on another man's knee, her laugh melting into his in my living room, our living room. I closed my eyes and tried to force my brain to shut off, but the images wouldn't stop replaying. Her calm smile. The wine glasses. The way she didn't flinch. It all looped over and over again until I couldn't tell if I was dreaming or just sinking deeper into something I didn't want to face. That's when the floodgates opened. One by one, the memories came rushing in. Little things. Scattered moments that at the time I had brushed off. Dismissed. Explained away. But now, in the silence of our bedroom, they all came back, and suddenly none of them felt so little anymore. I remembered how she started sleeping with her phone face down a few months ago. Said the light was distracting. I believed her. Why wouldn't I? But then she started taking the phone with her everywhere, even to the bathroom. I used to joke about it. Can't live without your lifeline, huh? She'd laugh, but not really. And now I saw that laugh for what it was, deflection. And then there were the nights she worked late. So many of them. Too many. At first, it was once every few weeks. Then once a week. Then twice. And when I asked about it, she'd shrug and say, it's just busy season. You know how it is. I knew how her job worked. I also knew busy season doesn't last 6 months. The girls' nights started not long after. Every couple of weeks, then every week. Always the same routine, a kiss on the cheek, a promise not to stay out too late, a vague mention of which friend she was meeting. But she never said where they were going. Never sent photos. And when she got back, she smelled like perfume she didn't wear for me. Sometimes like wine, sometimes like cologne. Never mine. I should have said something. I should have asked more questions. But I didn't want to be that guy, the controlling, jealous husband. I didn't want to be insecure. I wanted to trust her. And honestly, a big part of me was just afraid of what I might find if I pushed. Then there was that one night, a few months ago now, when I asked her if she wanted to go away for the weekend. Just the two of us. Somewhere quiet. A cabin, a lake, something simple. I needed it. We needed it. But she barely looked up from her laptop and said, I've already got plans. No explanation. Just a wall. And when I asked, with who, she snapped, does it matter? That moment should have told me everything. But I let it go. I told myself she was stressed, that maybe I caught her at the wrong time. I swallowed it down. Like I always did. And there were other things, too. Subtler changes. How she stopped asking about my day. How her eyes started drifting when I talked, like she wasn't really listening. How she stopped saying I love you unless I said it first. How we went from hugging every morning to barely brushing shoulders in the hallway. There was distance, a canyon, and I kept building bridges over it, hoping they'd hold. But she was already burning them from the other side. I remembered one night I woke up around 2 a.m. and noticed she wasn't in bed. I found her downstairs, sitting in the dark, scrolling her phone. She jumped when she saw me, then said she couldn't sleep. I offered to make tea. She said no and went back upstairs without another word. And the ** Macy? That disappeared long before any of this came to the surface. At first, we blamed stress, work, life. Then we just stopped talking about it altogether. It became this quiet agreement between us, don't ask, don't initiate, don't acknowledge the distance. Just pretend. Keep moving. I convinced myself it was normal. That couples go through phases. That we'd find our way back. But now I saw the truth, she'd already left. Emotionally, mentally. Probably even physically. She just hadn't told me yet. All those signs, all those gut feelings I pushed aside, they weren't paranoia. They were alarms I refused to hear. And suddenly I remembered something else. Something small. A month ago, she left her laptop open while she went to shower. I don't snoop, never have, but a message popped up on the screen. I only saw part of it. Last night was amazing. Can't stop thinking about it. No name. Just a preview. She walked in a minute later, saw me looking at the screen, and casually closed the laptop like it was nothing. I didn't ask. She didn't explain. God, I should have asked. The worst part is, I didn't just miss the signs. I chose not to see them. I wanted so badly to believe in us that I ignored the truth staring me in the face. And now I couldn't unsee it. She stirred beside me sometime around 4, pulled the blanket over her shoulder, and settled back into sleep. I watched her, wondering how many lies were tangled in her dreams. When the sun finally came up, I still hadn't closed my eyes. I got out of bed quietly, showered, dressed, and went downstairs. Made coffee like I always did, only this time the routine felt absurd, like I was playacting a version of my life that no longer existed. Celine came down an hour later. Hair messy, robe tied loose, that same sleepy smile she used to give me in the early days of our marriage. Hey, she said, reaching for a mug. You're up early. Couldn't sleep? She nodded like it was nothing. Like I wasn't slowly unraveling from the inside out. She sat at the table, scrolling her phone. I sipped my coffee in silence, watching her face as her fingers flew over the screen. She smiled at something. Laughed softly. And all I could think was, who is she talking to? I didn't ask. I didn't trust myself to stay calm if I did. Instead, I finished my coffee, said I had errands to run, and left. No kiss, no goodbye. And as I drove aimlessly through town, one thought kept echoing in my head. This wasn't a glitch, this was the pattern. This was the truth finally unraveling. That moment on the couch, her hand on his knee, was the tip of the iceberg. I had been living in the part below the surface for months. Sunday started like any other. Or at least, it tried to. I woke up to the sound of birds outside the window, the kind of crisp, blue sky morning you usually appreciate. But I didn't feel anything. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, going through the motions. The weight in my chest hadn't lifted. It hadn't dulled either. It was just there, a dull, constant pressure, like something was waiting to happen. Something I didn't want, but needed to see. Celine was already up. I heard the shower running, the soft thud of drawers opening and closing. She was humming. I remember that part vividly. Humming like it was just another day. Like everything in our world was intact. By the time I came downstairs, she was dressed, makeup on, hair curled at the ends, wearing one of her nicer coats. The kind she usually saved for dinner dates or weddings. I just stood there, watching her grab her purse and keys, pretending not to notice that she jumped slightly when she saw me at the bottom of the stairs. You going somewhere? I asked, keeping my voice flat. Just brunch with Monica, she said quickly. Too quickly. She's having a rough time. You know, that whole thing with her breakup? I nodded slowly, though my mind was already spinning. Monica. The same Monica who was out of town this weekend for her sister's baby shower. I knew because Monica posted about it last night, an airport selfie with the caption California bound. I'd seen it. And I'm sure Celine had too. She just didn't think I'd pay attention. She kissed me on the cheek and walked out the door. I stood there for a moment, letting it all sink in. Then I grabbed my jacket, got in the car, and started driving. I had no plan, just a growing need to know. I couldn't take the ambiguity anymore. I needed something solid. Something undeniable. I drove toward downtown, following a hunch more than logic. My hands were tight on the wheel. I wasn't even sure what I was looking for. But my gut, the one I'd ignored for months, was finally screaming loud enough to drown out my doubts. That's when I saw it. I had just turned onto 3rd Street, heading toward the east side when I spotted a black Audi parked outside the Kincaid Hotel, a mid-range place, nothing flashy, but discreet. Familiar. Very familiar. I slowed down. That car, it was the same one parked outside our house the night I came home early. Eric's car. I circled the block once, trying not to let my hands shake, trying to be rational. But then I saw her. Through the glass lobby doors, walking beside him, arm linked in his, laughing. Celine. She was wearing the green dress, the one she told me didn't fit anymore. The one she hadn't worn since our anniversary 2 years ago. It clung to her in all the right places. She looked beautiful. She looked like someone who cared how she appeared, not for brunch, not for Monica, but for him. They didn't see me. I parked half a block away and watched as they walked up to the front desk together. Her hand brushed against his back as she leaned in. The receptionist smiled and nodded. They were checking in. I waited until they disappeared down the hallway, then I sat there in my car, unmoving, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles ached. My heart was thudding in my ears, but the rest of me felt ice cold. I stayed in the car for nearly an hour. I thought about driving off, pretending I never saw it. I thought about confronting them right there, walking into the lobby and tearing everything down. But I didn't want a scene. I didn't want an argument. I didn't want to hear lies dressed up as explanations. I wanted clarity. So I got out of the car and walked into the lobby. The girl at the front desk looked up and smiled politely. "Hi. Can I help you?" I hesitated for a second, then said, "Yeah, I'm looking for my sister." She said she was meeting a friend here before his flight. "Name's Eric, not sure the last name, but it might be under hers." "Celine." She typed something into the computer, looked up and said they just checked out about 20 minutes ago. My breath caught. "Checked out?" She nodded. "Yes, just before you walked in, actually. I believe they're on their way to the airport now." I stared at her, trying to process that. 20 minutes. Just enough time to walk in, do whatever they were doing, and leave again. Like it was routine. Like it was nothing. I thanked her, turned around, and walked back to my car, each step feeling heavier than the last. The drive home was a blur. I didn't play music. I didn't even think. I just drove, feeling hollow and sick. Everything I'd suspected was true. All the signs, all the doubts, all the pieces, they weren't paranoia. They were puzzle pieces falling into place. When I got home, she wasn't back yet. I waited. She walked in about an hour later, holding a coffee cup and wearing that same green dress. She looked startled to see me. "Back already?" she asked, feigning casual. I didn't answer. She walked into the kitchen, putting down her bag, humming again like she hadn't just burned our life to the ground. "I ran into an old friend at the coffee shop," she called out. "Ended up staying a little longer than I thought." I walked in slowly. My voice was steady. "You mean Eric?" She froze. I didn't give her time to respond. "I saw you," I said. "At the hotel. I saw everything." Her back was still to me. She didn't turn around. For a long moment, she didn't move at all. Then she let out a breath and turned, arms crossed. "Okay," she said quietly. That was it. No denial. No panic. No explanation. Just okay. I waited for more. A defense. An excuse. Maybe even an apology. But she just looked at me like it wasn't a big deal. Like we were talking about the weather. "What do you want me to say?" she asked. "I want the truth," I said. "All of it. Not the coffee story. Not the college friend excuse. The truth." She didn't even flinch. "We've been seeing each other for a few months," she said. "It's not serious. It just happened." "Not serious," I repeated. "You don't dress like that for someone who's not serious." She looked down at her hands. "You were gone. You were always gone. I didn't plan this, okay? I didn't wake up one day and decide to. You just let it happen." She didn't deny it. "Are you in love with him?" I asked. "No." "Are you leaving me?" "I don't know." That was the moment something snapped in me. Not in an angry, explosive way. Not in a way that made me shout or throw anything. Just a quiet, internal break. Like a cable snapping under too much tension. The weight of it all came down on me in that second, and I didn't feel anger anymore, just clarity. "You don't have to," I said. "Because I'm leaving you." Her eyes flicked up. For the first time, she looked truly caught off guard. "What?" "I'm done, Celine." "Wait, No. No more lies. No more pretending. No more excuses. You made your choice. I saw it with my own eyes." She opened her mouth, maybe to fight it, maybe to cry, but I didn't stick around to hear it. I walked past her, up the stairs, and into the bedroom. Started packing a bag. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't care. I just knew I couldn't stay. I didn't leave that night, not completely. I packed a bag. Sure, but I didn't have anywhere to go yet. The only places that came to mind were hotels or my buddy Greg's couch, and neither felt right. What I needed more than anything was a plan. Not just to run away from the wreckage, but to start building something new. Something that didn't include lies. Something that didn't include her. So, instead of storming out and slamming the door like a movie character, I sat in my car, parked right there in our driveway. I sat for almost an hour, watching the porch light flicker from the motion sensor, the shadows of the oak tree dancing across the hood. My thoughts weren't racing anymore. They were eerily quiet, focused. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to plead for answers she had no intention of giving. I didn't need her to cry or apologize or try to spin some version of the truth where I was somehow at fault for her betrayal. I'd played that part already. The patient husband, the one who blamed himself for her coldness, her silence. That part of me was gone now, just like the trust. I walked back inside around midnight. She was sitting on the couch, knees pulled up to her chest, staring at the blank TV screen. I didn't say anything. Neither did she. I just walked upstairs, left the packed bag by the closet, and crawled into bed fully clothed, facing the wall. Not because I couldn't bear to look at her, but because I wanted her to understand. There was nothing left to talk about. The next morning, I got up early, earlier than usual. I showered, shaved, got dressed, and made breakfast, just for myself. I didn't ask if she wanted coffee, didn't leave out her favorite mug. It wasn't a statement. It wasn't revenge. It was clarity. I was starting to live for myself again. After too long of putting her moods, her needs, her excuses ahead of mine, I left the house without saying a word. Drove to work in silence. But it felt different this time. Like I wasn't dragging a weight behind me. Like I had finally cut the rope. And something shifted after that. Not all at once, but slowly, deliberately. I stopped making her dinner. For years, I'd come home and put something together: pasta, salmon, the stir-fry she used to request when we were still us. I'd make enough for two, even when she wasn't home, even when she came back late or not at all. But not anymore. From then on, I cooked what I wanted when I wanted, and if there were leftovers, they stayed in the fridge. I didn't ask her about her day. Didn't wait for her to ask about mine, because she never really did. I didn't ask where she was going when she left at night. Didn't text to check in. Didn't leave the porch light on. I changed my phone number. That was a big one. She found out the hard way when she tried to text me during the day and the message didn't go through. That night, she asked about it in the kitchen. "You changed your number?" she said, trying to sound casual, like it wasn't bizarre for a husband to do that without mentioning it. "Yeah," I said, not looking up from the sink. Needed a fresh start. She didn't push, just nodded and walked away. But I could feel her watching me from across the room. Like she didn't recognize me. Like I'd become a stranger overnight. And maybe I had. Or maybe I was just becoming myself again. The version of me that existed before I built my life around her mood swings and half-truths. I started spending more time at the office. Not because I was drowning in work, I wasn't. But because it felt good to be somewhere I was valued. My boss noticed. He even asked me to take on a leadership role in an upcoming project. I said yes without hesitation. I reconnected with old friends. The kind she used to scoff at. She'd call them childish or immature. Say things like, "You're not in college anymore, babe," whenever I mentioned wanting to hang out. But those same guys, they were the first ones to answer when I reached out. No judgment, just support. One of them, Marcus, even invited me to his cabin for a weekend to clear my head. I didn't go, not yet. But the invitation meant something. I joined a gym again. Not because I wanted to get revenge hot, as the internet likes to say, but because I missed feeling strong. I missed feeling capable. And more than that, I missed caring about my own well-being. The first day I walked in, the smell of sweat and old rubber hit me like a wave of nostalgia. I ran 2 miles on the treadmill, then lifted until my arms trembled. It hurt, but it felt good, the kind of hurt that means you're rebuilding. At home, the silence between us grew thicker. Celine tried, here and there, to break it. She'd leave a plate for me in the fridge. Ask if I wanted to watch a show we used to love. She even brought up getting a dog once. Like that would glue the cracks back together. I didn't respond. I wasn't being cruel. I wasn't being petty. I was just done handing her chances she hadn't earned. The turning point came one night when I came home late, later than usual. I'd gone out with Marcus and a few guys from work. Just beers, pool, nothing wild. But when I walked through the front door, I found her sitting on the stairs in pajamas, hair tied back, eyes wide like she'd been waiting up. "Where were you?" she asked. "Out." She blinked. "With who?" I shrugged off my coat. "Friends." She stood slowly. "You could have told me." I was worried. That's when I laughed, not loudly, not cruelly. Just a bitter little laugh that escaped before I could stop it. "You were worried?" She winced. "I just meant." "I know what you meant." She didn't say anything after that. That was the moment I realized how much power she had lost. Not because I'd taken it from her, but because she no longer knew how to reach me. Not emotionally. Not mentally. She had no idea how to exist in a version of our relationship where I wasn't orbiting around her. I'd stopped playing the part. Stopped participating in the performance. It's funny how quickly things fall apart when only one person is trying to keep up appearances. I stopped wearing my wedding ring a few days later. Took it off one morning while brushing my teeth and didn't bother to put it back on. Left it in the drawer with some old receipts and spare change. She noticed. Of course she did. But she didn't say anything. I started sleeping better. Eating better. I began reading again, picking up books I'd bought years ago but never opened because she hated when I read at night. I even pulled my old guitar out of the attic, the one I hadn't touched since our first year of marriage. The strings were a little rusty, but my fingers remembered more than I expected. I played until the tips of my fingers ached. Then I played some more. There's a kind of healing that comes from remembering who you used to be, who you were before the disappointment, before the quiet resentment, before the lies. Celine still lived in the house, but we were no longer sharing a life. We were just two people occupying the same space. I hadn't filed for divorce yet. Not because I was unsure. I wasn't. But because I wanted to move with purpose, not rage. I didn't want to be another guy who stormed out and left everything messy. I wanted clarity. Clean breaks. And so I began drawing lines. Quietly. Firmly. Deliberately. I made appointments. I started looking at apartments in nearby cities. I reviewed our finances. I spoke to a lawyer. I took one step then another. Each move was mine. Not in reaction to her, not anymore, but for me. And with every step I felt lighter. Not because it didn't hurt God, it did. But because I finally understood something I'd been too scared to admit for too long. Sometimes the best way to save yourself is to stop trying to save what's already gone. I didn't mark the exact day the dynamic shifted. But I noticed it in small doses, like how you don't realize you're getting stronger until the weights that once broke you feel light. It wasn't dramatic. There was no argument or scene. I didn't announce that I was different. I just stopped being available. And apparently that was enough to unsettle her. It began with breakfast. Celine started coming downstairs earlier than usual. Before, she'd sleep in, drifting down around 9 or 10, wrapped in her robe with her hair still a mess, scrolling through her phone before even saying good morning. But now? She was up when I was. She wore makeup. Not full glam, but enough to notice. Her hair was brushed, curled at the ends like she used to do when we first met. She made pancakes one morning. From scratch. The same ones she hadn't bothered with in years. "They're your favorite," she said with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. I didn't respond. Just poured coffee and sat at the far end of the table. I didn't ask why. I didn't compliment her effort. I ate too, said thanks, and left for work. That was the first time she looked confused. And it continued like that. Little gestures. One evening I came home late from the gym, something I did regularly now, and found the living room spotless. Candles lit. A blanket folded neatly on the couch. Music playing softly in the background. A homemade dinner waiting on the table, chicken marsala, my favorite from our first anniversary. She even opened a bottle of red wine and set out 2 glasses. I stood in the doorway, keys still in hand, just watching her as she stirred the sauce. "Oh, you're back," she said, turning to me like she hadn't clearly orchestrated the whole thing. "What's all this?" I asked. "Thought we could have a nice night in. Like old times?" I nodded slowly. "I already ate." Her face fell just for a second. Then she recovered. "No worries. I'll put it in the fridge." I walked upstairs without another word. I heard her quietly blow out the candles a few minutes later. I didn't feel proud. I didn't feel cruel. I felt nothing. And that scared her. She tried other tactics. She started asking questions, the kind she hadn't cared about in years. "How was your day? Are you staying late at work again? Who's Marcus? You've been seeing him a lot lately." One morning I was buttoning my shirt in front of the mirror when she leaned against the doorframe and said, "You look good." "Been working out, huh?" I gave her a noncommittal and kept adjusting my collar. "You haven't worn that shirt in forever," she added, stepping closer. "Yeah," I said. "Fits now." She reached out to straighten my tie, a reflex maybe. But I stepped back before she could. Her hand froze midair. "Just trying to help," she mumbled. "I'm good," I replied, grabbing my keys. She didn't follow me to the door. The harder she tried, the more awkward it felt. Like watching someone rehearse a scene they once performed flawlessly, except now they'd forgotten the lines and I wasn't playing the role they expected. She even brought up going on a weekend trip. Just the 2 of us. "To reconnect," she said. "To reset everything." I looked at her, really looked at her, and realized something brutal. She wasn't doing this out of love. It was fear. She wasn't fighting for me, she was fighting for control. Control she no longer had. She could feel it. Like a ghost limb. She was used to being the sun I orbited. But now? I was drifting out of her gravity. And she had no idea how to pull me back. One Friday night, I came home and found her dressed in a silk robe. One I hadn't seen in years, maybe since our honeymoon. Her hair was done. Makeup soft. Scented candles burned in the bedroom. Jazz playing on low volume from her speaker. "Hey," she said softly. "Thought we could talk." I walked past her, unbuttoning my cuffs. "About what?" "About us," she said. "About everything." I turned to face her. "You sure it's not about you?" She blinked. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means you didn't want to talk when I begged you to months ago. You didn't care when I brought up how distant we'd become. But now that I've stopped asking, now you want to reconnect." Her mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. "I know I messed up," she said, voice cracking. "But I'm trying now." "Why?" "Because I love you." "You love control," I said quietly. "That's not the same thing." She stepped back like I'd hit her. "That's not fair." Neither was lying to my face for months. Silence. I walked into the bathroom and closed the door. She didn't follow. After that, she backed off for a while. The sudden energy she'd poured into saving our marriage seemed to sputter. Maybe she thought I'd cave. Maybe she thought silence would draw me back. But the more she waited, the more distance I created. I moved my things out of our shared bathroom. I took calls on the patio. I wore headphones around the house. I put a password on my laptop. She didn't know how to respond. The version of me she remembered, the version she could nudge or guilt into compromise, was gone. Replaced by someone she couldn't predict. Someone she couldn't reach. And then came the jealousy. That's when I knew the tide had truly turned. I was folding laundry one Saturday afternoon when my phone buzzed. A text from a woman in marketing, Julia. Just confirming lunch plans. Nothing flirty. Nothing hidden. But Celine saw the name light up and immediately asked, "Who's Julia?" "Coworker," I said without looking up. She walked closer. "You're having lunch with her?" "Yeah." "Just the two of you?" I paused, looked up. "Why?" "No reason. Just curious." I folded another shirt. "You were never curious before." She said nothing. Later that day, she asked again. "You and Julia, is there something going on?" I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because of the irony. "You're really asking me that?" Her face reddened. "I'm just saying if there's something I should know." "There isn't," I cut in. "But I wouldn't owe you an explanation even if there was." That shut her up. I wasn't trying to be spiteful. But I also wasn't going to let her gaslight me into playing the villain. Not after everything she'd done. The truth was, she didn't miss me, she missed being in control of the narrative. And now the script was out of her hands. The days kept passing, and with each one, I felt more solid in my choices. Stronger. Clearer. Like someone who'd come back from a long coma remembering how to walk again. Breathe again. One night, I came home late and found her asleep on the couch. TV playing quietly. Empty wine glass on the coffee table. Her phone on the floor, screen still lit up with an unsent message. I picked it up and saw my name in the message field. No words. Just my name. I placed it back where I found it and went to bed. She never brought it up. There was nothing left to say. She tried. I'll give her that. She threw every play she had at the wall, sweetness, seduction, nostalgia, even guilt. But she never apologized. Not really. Not for him. Not for the lies. Not for the months I spent doubting myself while she rehearsed her exit strategy. She wanted to be forgiven without confessing. Wanted the safety net without the fall. But I wasn't going to catch her. Not this time.